I had the courage to reach out and ask them. A lot of times people think they're not good enough to ask, like I'm nobody. But, ask. It only takes one yes to get
Yes.
to where we want to go.
It's always going to be no if you don't ask. Hey, everybody, like what you see, Luxe Life with Candice Bar, or any of the Luxe Media Studios shows, make sure you subscribe and click the like below. Hey, everybody, welcome to Luxe Life. I'm your host, Candice Bar, and we are so excited for today. We are blessed to have Jack Canfield on with us. Hey, Jack.
Hi, Candice. Glad to be here.
Yes, we're so excited to have you. I've been wanting you on for such a long time, so I am super, super excited. You are such an inspiration to not only myself, but millions and millions and millions of other people. And a lot of people would know you from obviously your Chicken Soup from the Soul series and countless other books. I know we talked a little bit earlier. And so I would love to hear your journey and your story, kind of starting from the beginning. The beginning is a great place to start usually. And I want to I want to know, where are you from and how you got into, not only writing all the series and writing all the books, but how you got into you're a coach, you're a trainer, you're a speaker, you've done so many awesome things.
Well, I started out typical middle-class kid growing up in Wheeling, West Virginia, and I got a scholarship to go to Harvard because I played football. I graduated in half of the classes. I made a top half possible, so it wasn't my intellectual prowess that got me there. But I looked for a class my senior year. I said I need an easy A. So I was asking all my friends, what's an easy A? And they said SocRel 10, Social Relations 10. So I said, okay. So I took it. It was kind of like a encounter group. We talked about our feelings and goals and stuff I had never done before. And so I remember saying, I want to grow up and do this after 4 years of studying Chinese history. So they said, I don't think you'll get into psychology school because you don't have any undergraduates, but you could get into graduate school in education and then kind of go into ed psych and you can sneak your way over into this world. So I started teaching in an all Black inner city school in Chicago. And about 2 months into it, I realized my kids were not motivated. And so my real intention became, how do I motivate these kids to believe in themselves, that they could achieve their goals, become anything they wanted when they didn't believe that. And so that's where I started. And I ended up meeting a guy named W. Clement Stone. He was a
Mm.
good friend of Napoleon Hill, who wrote Think and Grow Rich. And I started taking seminars at his foundation and became one of his trainers for a while. Went around the state, training teachers how to build kids' self-esteem. So that's how it all began. And then eventually I moved to Massachusetts to get a doctorate, which I dropped out of. But in the meanwhile, I married a woman who had a trust fund. So we bought a piece of land and created a retreat center and was doing Gestalt therapy and transactional analysis and Tai Chi and yoga and all that kind of stuff. So I was expanding my knowledge of how to help people grow. And it kept evolving from there. I ended up moving back to California, working for a training company called Insight, which was doing 300-400 people in a ballroom on weekends, which I had never done. There was like Est and LifeSpring and all these things were happening. So little by little, I moved into doing large trainings. And then at one time, I decided the guy that was running the company, I decided he was a cult leader. I decided I was working for a cult leader. So I said, I'm going to quit, start my own company, $10,000 loan from my mother-in-law. And
Yeah.
I got a hollow core door on 2 file cabinets in my kitchen, electric typewriter, and started self-esteem seminars. And was doing primarily consultation for schools. And then when the Gulf War hit, 93, there was no money for that. So I had to move into trainings for companies, change the name to Self-Esteem and Peak Performance because companies like the words peak performance.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and then eventually wrote the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, which changed my life. And we've now sold almost 600 million books in 51 languages.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Let
pretty
me ask you,
bizarre.
Jack, when, as you were building all this, and as even in the beginning when you're moving forward with that, How did you get the confidence to start that? Because, when you started that, that wasn't really a conversation typically, and that wasn't really the norm. How did you kind of just say, well, let's just see what shakes out, let's see what happens, or did you have a knowing inside that you knew this was going to go somewhere?
Well, I think if you'd asked me if I had a secret for success, it was that I always followed my joy. I followed what excited me. I followed what turned me on. There's a great quote from Howard Thurman. He was Martin Luther King's spiritual advisor.
Mm,
And he said, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive. Because what the
mm,
world needs are people who've come alive. And I think we've seen now through all the law of attraction work and people like Esther Hicks and Abraham, follow your joy.
yeah,
That means you're on course, you're on purpose.
yeah,
So I always kind of knew. I'm not saying I wasn't scared. I'm not saying I didn't have doubts. I certainly did. But each step of the way, I just decided, let's go for it. And, a little help from here and there, like my mother-in-law let us $10,000. And that's how I bought my first Selectric typewriter,
yeah.
And so, I mean, it was a time when I left Insight and I was running my own company. Literally, that's all I had was $10,000. And I was
Yeah.
like, going to the printer to print letterhead. I was going to the Xerox place. I was going to the post office every day. I was stapling up brochures on bulletin boards at UCLA. I mean, I was, I
You were
had to do
doing it.
whatever.
You were the salesperson, you were the probably accountant,
Yeah,
you were the trainer, you were everything.
I was the entire org chart.
I love
Yeah,
that. And so as it has evolved, and clearly it has, I want to fast forward and then we'll jump around
sure.
into the books. And did you have a vision, or did you have when you look back of what you've created, are you shocked of what has happened, or did you always kind of know, like, I expected this to be like this?
I always expected to have something good happen and be somewhat successful, but
Yeah.
everything in my life was always more than I imagined. And well, but I
Yes.
did imagine it, using those visualization tools. But when I was a graduate student at the University of Massachusetts, I wrote a book called 100 Ways to Enhance Self-Concept in the Classroom. And normally a book in education, you might sell 30, 40,000 copies.
Yeah.
But I lucked out, had a really great publisher who knew how to do direct mail. And we sold 400,000 copies of that book,
Oh.
which got me invitations to speak at conferences and school systems. And then when we did Chicken Soup for the Soul,
Mm,
I didn't know what was going to happen. Here's what happened. What was interesting. I knew people like stories because this is what turned my kids on when I was teaching history. If I was teaching facts, treaties, people like looking out the window board. If I was telling a story about
yeah.
some black person who climbed out of the ghetto and started the business, or someone in history who was an escaped slave, whatever, they were really interested. So I knew stories were important. And so I was coming back on the plane from Chicago, not no, Boston to LA, where I lived at the time. And I thought, how many stories do I know? And I made a list of 70 stories. I thought, well, this would be enough for a book. So I made a commitment that every day I would write, well, twice a week, I would write two stories, meaning Monday through Wednesday, I'd write one story. Thursday through Friday, I'd write a second story. And then a week later, I'd edit them. And by the
Mm,
end of the year, I thought if I did that, I'd have 100 stories that would make a book.
yeah.
And that's kind of what happened. At the end of the book, the thing most people don't know, books are made by what we call folios. So they're printed and then they get folded. And often you'll see in the back of a book, there'll be 3 or 4 blank pages. And so I said to the publisher, can we use those? And he said, sure. And we just said, if you have a story, send it in. Maybe we'll do a sequel. We
Mm,
started getting bankers boxes full of envelopes every day with people's stories. And that morphed into Chicken Soup for the women's soul, the teenage soul, the
yes.
children's soul. And when I sold the company about 10 years ago, literally we had published 200 titles, and they people I sold it
Wow.
to have done 100 titles since then. So there's 600 million books in 50 languages around the world, and
Mm.
that's a lot of books.
I want to ask you, that's super impressive, but I want to ask you, everyone I've ever interviewed on the show, they're all been entrepreneurs, all the things. And, throughout life and throughout entrepreneurship, we always talk about how important it is to have a mentor, to have a coach, to have that. And that, it always changes as you grow. The person's going to change. And so who has been some impactful mentors or coaches throughout your life to help you on your journey?
Yeah, excuse me, I always did have coaches starting in graduate school, really. There were certain couple professors liked me, kind of took
Mm,
me under their wing and mentored me, coached me. Remember one of them said, if you're looking for a book in a bookstore about a topic and you can't find it, it means you're supposed to write it, which is why I wrote my first
mm,
book on self-esteem
yes.
and activities. And he coached me because he was a best-selling author as well. So he coached me a lot about that. And then when I went to the Stone Foundation and was working there for WM Stone, a couple people there took me under their wings. I always kind of had people who saw my potential. And, and if you don't, you reach out, you ask people. When we did Chicken Soup for the Soul, I reached out to 5 best-selling authors: Ken Blanchard, who wrote The 1 Minute Manager; John Gray, who'd written Men Are from Mars;
Yeah.
um, a guy who'd written a book about TM, Transcendental Meditation, and so forth. And the one that would help me the most, he'd written a book called The Road Less Traveled. And he said, I want you to do 3 interviews a day, every day for a year, and 1 interview a day for the next 10 years, which he had done. Scott Peck. Scott Peck sold 40 million copies of that one book. And
Wow.
that little bit of mentoring, people spending maybe 10 minutes on the phone with me saying, this
Yes.
is what I did, this is what you should do, uh, changed my life. But I think the key is I had the courage to reach out and ask them. A lot of times people think they're not good enough to ask, like I'm nobody. But ask, 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 ask. It only takes one yes to get
Yes.
to where we want to go.
It's always going to be no if you don't ask.
That's right. That's right.
I love that. That's a great point too. Thank you for bringing that up. Reaching out to certain people that you think or that you deem to be, higher than you, or, that you may think are super busy or won't deal with you for whatever reason. If you a
Right.
lot of people are actually very willing to help.
Sure. Because, somebody helped them. Like I help a lot of people. I mean, I
Yeah.
run retreats for authors and trainers. We train trainers. We do free calls sometimes. Like I do a call twice a year where we'll have 4,000 people on the call and I'll run them through a belief change exercise that literally
Yes.
transforms their lives. And if you were to meet me at a conference and say, can we have a drink and share 10 ideas with me? I'd say yes, 9 times out of 10, even
Yeah.
if my wife's rolling her eyes, it's what I do, so yeah. And you have to say no to some people or you'd get overwhelmed. But,
Yeah.
basically you'd be surprised how many people will say yes.
Yes. I love that point. I want to ask you, and I'm sure you have countless stories on this, but can you think of a story now for us, someone that they told you, or that you worked with or mentored, that you've really changed their life? I know you've helped change a lot of people's lives, and that's such a loaded question, but is there anyone in the forefront of your mind that they started with you one way, and when they ended with you, they were completely different?
Yeah, I can. Well, the first one that comes to mind is a guy named Matt Nealon. He was just in one of our retreats about a year and a half ago. He lives in Texas. He was an EMT, emergency responder, and he decided he wanted to start training emergency responders. And so I said, well, great. But what if you could 10 times what you want to do? Think bigger. And he
Yeah.
went back and he was in a very negative environment. We hear this phrase, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And his
Yes.
brother was a doomsayer, like we got all have bomb shelters and protect ourselves, in the future and, all that kind of stuff. And he got really depressed and he realized that wasn't working. And I told him some books to read. And I said, you can do 10 times more than you think. So he went home, stopped talking to his brother, got him off the mailing list, if you will, read my book and Tony Robbins and whatever, and started
Yes.
thinking positive. And then he decided to open up more schools. And so now he has I think 10 schools in Texas. And some guy
Wow.
came to him and said, we have $1 million grant to open up training programs for EMT EMS. And most people don't want to take the money. Would you be willing? He said, absolutely. So he's now 10 times his income, works actually
Wow.
less, affecting more people. And that'll happen in 18 months. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's another great point, actually. Like, things don't have to take forever. Things don't have to take as long as we think. Things can happen instantaneously if you're willing to put one foot in front of the other and do the thing of the thing.
Yeah. Now, some things do take time. There's no question. It takes time to write a book, it's been my
Yeah.
experience. But if you write a page a day in a year, you have a 365-page book. So not that big a deal. You can dictate what you want into your cell phone, have it transcribed. There's Otter, there's Rev, there's all kinds of things like that. And basically things can happen very, very quickly. I had a friend
Yes.
who runs the Pachamama Alliance, a woman named Lynn Twist. And I said, you have the best stories ever. You need to get them out to the world. She said, I'm not a writer, I'm an activist. I said, well, you need to write these stories. And she wouldn't do it. So I said, come to my house. You're going to sit on a bar stool for 2 days. I'm going to invite 10 of my friends. You're going to tell stories. We're going to record them, send them to Rev. We get them back 10 days later. You edit them, you got a book. So she
Yeah.
did. And so in 2 days, with a little bit of editing, she had a book. And so the idea is most people think it's harder than it is.
Yes.
Certain things take time and effort. There's no question,
Yes.
but, uh, you get to the point where I was in India and I was just teaching over there for the Times of India, the 1 day seminars for business people. And I got invited to a dinner party, and there was a guru there from Kerala, the southern part of India. And he took me out into the garden of this mansion we were in, and he was wearing a t-shirt. And we talked for a while about what I was doing, and he loved what I was doing and gave me some advice. And then he reached out his hand. Remember, he's wearing a t-shirt, bare armed, turned his hand over, said, turn your hand up. So I turned my hand up. He goes like this, and he drops mala beads out of his hand. And I don't know where they came from. He
Okay.
manifested them out of nothing right now. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to visualize it, we're going to firm it, we're going to go build it, we're going to create a factory. It was like right now. And I've seen people literally, once you get to the place where you realize you are a co-creator with spirit, with
Yeah.
universal intelligence, you create things really quickly. I have friends.
Yes.
I heard a story the other day. She said, I wanted to go to this concert. All the tickets were sold out. I just said, God, I really want to go to this concert. And she just visualized being at the concert. And within 10 minutes, the phone rang, and her friend said, I got tickets to this concert. I can't go. Would you take them? So things can happen that fast if we're in
Absolutely.
that space of like, but you have to be in the right consciousness. You have to believe it's
Yes.
possible. You have to be expecting it. You have to be in a high vibration of love, gratitude, appreciation. If you
Yes.
do that, you can manifest very quickly.
Believing Before Seeing, a new bestseller by Candice Bar. Order your copy today.
I love that. Thank you for bringing that up too, because I actually wrote a book on that as well called Believing Before Seeing. It's my first book. And
Oh,
it's
good.
about, I'm glad you brought up Abraham. I'm a huge Abraham person. I was just on her cruise, and actually she picked me. So that was a big deal for me. But yeah, huge Abraham person. And can I ask you, I think people make manifesting or attracting, even visualizing, I think we as humans, we tend to make things very complicated and hard, and it absolutely does not need to. It's not required. What is it that you do in your practice that makes things pretty easy and can be pretty effortless? Some tips that you can give some people?
Well, first of all, I had to believe it could be that way. And I'm a big fan of Abraham as well. I remember I was being interviewed by these two people in San Francisco, and it was on KBC or whatever it was, KPFK. And they were so much fun. So I called them right back. I said, I don't know what you guys are doing, but whatever it is, I want to do it. Either you found a drug I'd never heard of, you got a guru I need to study with, you have a meditation technique I need to learn. And in unison, they said, Abraham. I said, what's an Abraham? So they told me. I downloaded all these, like, the Google things that were available. And then I
Yes.
joined the CD of the month club that they had. And I had to learn. I was always positive. I always did visualization affirmations, but I didn't really get it fully till I got
Yeah.
it from them. And so what I do, I meditate every day. I visualize whatever I want. It's already happening.
Yeah.
I also have affirmations I do. And then I teach people, you want to keep your vibration high. And I tell people to make a 20 things I love to do list. Because when you're doing what you love to do, your vibration's high.
Yeah.
Pet your cat, watch a certain TV show, play your guitar, listen to Bob Dylan songs, whatever it
Yeah.
might be that gets you high, it makes you feel good, gardening, being out in nature, whatever. Do that every day. Make sure you do that. And what'll happen when your vibration's high, then the things that you want will be attracted to you. the thing that most people misunderstand when they saw the movie The Secret or having the conversation we're having is when those opportunities show up, you do have to act. You do have
Yes.
to do something like, say yes to the invitation, write the article for the magazine, you
Yes.
know, prepare the speech that they
You
invited
have
you
to,
to talk.
like, you actually have to go to the gym.
Yeah. You know, John Assaraf has this wonderful thing. He calls it the law of Goya, and Goya stands for get off your ass. So it's one thing to have the law of attraction, but you also have to do action. I always find it fascinating that the word attraction, the last 6 letters are action. Attraction,
Mhm.
action. Yeah.
Yes. 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 What, you know, I would love to hear, do you have a morning routine for yourself that you stick to? And also, important to me, do you have a nighttime routine?
Yes. So morning routine, I teach something called the hour of power, which is 20 minutes of meditation. And within that, the last few minutes are my visualization, affirmation, and gratitude. And then I do 20 minutes of very brisk either aerobic exercise or weightlifting. And then I do 20 minutes of listening to something, a YouTube video like a TED Talk or reading a book or a magazine, something will uplift me or teach me a skill like tapping or, whatever you wanted to learn. And so for me, that hour of power, you think you do that every day. That's 365 hours divided by 40 hours. That's 9.5 40-hour work weeks of personal development. And most people don't do that. And so and then you can write, there are people that, the 5 a.m. club, you write in the journal, other things you can add into it, but those are the ones I do. And then in the evening, and I do some stretching too in yoga after I work out. But then in the evening, I do a couple of things. I do a thing called the evening review. So let's say you're working on a quality, like I want to be more perseverant, I want to be more compassionate, I want to be more consistent, whatever. Then you can ask yourself, where could have I been more compassionate today? Where could have I been more perseverant today? Where could have I been more loving today? And you do that with your eyes closed. And what happens is you get scenes come up where you were impatient, where you got angry, where you were irritable, whatever. And then what you do, have awareness. Awareness plus choice plus action equals change. So now I visualize myself tomorrow in that same situation, responding the way I'd like to respond if I was conscious and intentional. So I'm programming my subconscious mind to act in this new way in alignment with my intention. So that's the first thing I do. And then also I will do a little bit of meditation to let go of anything, tension during the day. I might do a Byron Katie exercise if someone pissed me off. Byron Katie has those 4 questions. Do you know that work, Byron Katie's work?
No, I don't actually.
Okay, this is, for everyone watching this is critically cool. So Byron Katie wrote a book called Loving What Is. Basically, all of our upset comes when we resist what is. So if you're coming at me and I stand there and I block you, I'm resisting you, I'm going to get hurt. So if, let's say my wife yelled at me, now I'm mad at my wife. So I have a belief my wife shouldn't have yelled at me. I have a belief that she shouldn't have yelled at me. Then the question you ask is it true? Is it true that my wife shouldn't have yelled at me? Well, I don't know. Maybe she needed to. Maybe I needed to be yelled at. Maybe I need to learn how to stay calm. She's my lesson on staying calm when I'm yelled at, whatever. The second question is, is it absolutely true? Is it absolutely true that Putin should not have invaded Ukraine? I would like him not to have, but do I know that in the highest good of all concerned on a planet that's evolving, that shouldn't have happened? Maybe it's going to help bring us all together in some way that we wouldn't have otherwise. The third question is, who am I when I have that belief? Well, I'm miserable. I walk around depressed. I want to get back at my wife, whatever. Who am I without that belief? I'm a happy, joyful person who just wants to hang out with my wife and be loving and kind. And then you have to turn it around. My wife should have yelled at me, or I should have yelled at me for doing that stupid thing I did. Because anyway, if you do that every day for a month for anything that upset you, you end up being so calm. And anything that happens, you just go, oh, that's just what is. Big effing deal. So I do that exercise for anything that upset me during the day, traffic, when my kid didn't clean his room up, whatever. And that's a very powerful tool. And then I visualize my life the way I want it to go the next day. And usually I'll meditate for 5 or 10 minutes and then I go to bed.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. I'm interested to hear you've done a lot of interviews, countless, I would say. What is something that people would be surprised to hear about you?
Um, well, one that I love to play ping pong with my 10-year-old grandson.
Very
Uh,
nice.
that I made my way through college by playing poker and pool because I was really good at it. Um,
I love that.
um, yeah, I went to Harvard, and as I mentioned, I was not the smartest kid, but there were a lot of rich kids there who had a
Yeah.
lot of money who didn't know
Yeah.
how to play poker, but they wanted to. So I was glad to educate them. But I don't do that much anymore. I got invited in Hawaii to play with Matthew McConaughey and a bunch of other people, Willie
Yeah.
Nelson. And I said, no, I don't think I want to spend $10,000 for bragging rights about that because these guys do it all the time. And for them,
Yeah.
$10,000 is like chump change. But
Right.
basically, that's something nobody knows about me.
I love that. I also want to ask you this, as you were coming up and as you became very successful, what was the first thing that you got yourself? And I ask every guest this, and the answer is always different. What was the first thing you got yourself that you always wanted, maybe growing up, and maybe thought it wasn't attainable, or you wouldn't be, it just wasn't a reality for you, but you ended up getting it?
I remember saying to my uncle when he asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I said, I wanted to be an egghead. And he said, what does that mean? I said, I want to be really smart. And I want to be someone that like would be invited to think tanks and people would
Hmm.
respect the knowledge and I could, help people and uplift their lives. And it wasn't about being wealthy. Um, Turns out I've created that, but it was really about wanting to know what the truth is, wanting to know what's really happening in the world, what
Mm.
really goes on behind the scenes. And that turned into wanting to know how people work, how the world works, how the mind works, how the body works,
Yes.
and then be able to share that with people. So, and then I think I really got that. I didn't really get that fully that I was there until I started to work for W. Clement Stone, who was this multimillionaire worth $600 million. And he had his foundation, and they used to have little gatherings where he would bring together brilliant people to teach him things. And I got to sit in on those. And I thought, oh, wow, this is freaking cool. And I said, like, I'm living my dream. So I guess I was probably about 23, 24, something like that.
Wow. I love that. So, Jack, I know you always have things going on. You're a mover and a shaker still, and you're still inspiring, educating, motivating, encouraging people. What can we expect to see from you in 2024?
Well, I'm working on 4 books. One is called Living the Success Principles. It's a book of people, stories who've either taken my Breakthrough to Success seminar or read the Success Principles book, or maybe saw The Secret and then applied those things to their lives. And the story I told you about, like Matt Nealon starting all the schools in Texas, and
Yes.
like how they applied 100% responsibility or visualization or building mastermind groups and so forth. Excuse me. So that's basically that book. And then I'm doing a book called The Power of Wow. How do you create wow experiences for your clients and
Mm,
so forth?
mm.
And it's just these amazing stories of companies and individuals and teams and so forth that have done that. They're really inspiring. And I'm working on a book with a woman who is a very spiritual, most people would say woo woo person. She does crystals and essential oils and
I love people like
cards.
that.
Yeah. And she's taken all the success principles, made a card deck out of them. And then, like you see these, tarot cards and things. And so
Yeah.
what you do is you hold the deck to your heart. You think of a challenge you have, put your energy in the deck, you spread it out, you pick a card, and it leads you to one of the principles in the book. And then we've added, in addition to the principle, like let's say, mastermind. And then there's like, what chakra does that relate to? What essential oil would you want to be using,
Mm,
diffusing, smelling? What crystal would you want to be carrying around in your pocket or put on your desk?
mm.
And what mantra would you want to be saying? Like you could repeat. So it's really bringing the spiritual into that principle. So
Yeah.
that book's 95% done. And then I'm working on a book called Awakening Abundance. And finally,
Mm.
a book, how to get yourself unstuck from limiting beliefs. Most of us, as you know, I'm sure probably teach, is that all of us have limiting beliefs that we we took on when we were between the ages of 3 and 8 years old. We don't even remember we made a decision. Can't trust men. It's not okay to get angry. Not okay to be loud, whatever. And then we're still running those beliefs and they're all subconscious. So working with a woman in Canada who's got the most amazing process that just
Mm,
immediately takes you back to when you made that belief, that
mm.
decision, how to release it, how to replace it, and then install it so that you're never run by that again. So that's pretty close to being done. And finally, our train the trainer program, where we've trained 4,500 people to do this work. They're all certified in 117 countries now doing it. We're creating a train the trainer of trainers. So now people that are out there can be running these trainings in India, training other trainers. And our goal is to have 1 million people teaching this work by the year 2030. So we've got another 6 years to achieve that.
Beautiful. I love that. Well, I could talk to you all day, Jack. You're so amazing, so impressive. And again, thank you for all the work you have done and continue to do, because you not only have helped myself, but helped, again, millions and millions of other people. Can you please, for whatever reason, if they are living under a rock, can you let people know where they can find you?
Yeah, just go to Jack Canfield, CANFIELD.com, and there'll be information on our upcoming Breakthrough to Success seminars, our executive retreats, our online click to buy programs that you can do on your own, meditations we have, etc. So just jackcanfield.com. Very simple.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jack. Everyone, please do check him out. Check out everything he has going on. You've seen him everywhere, so check out what he's doing. It just so, again, motivational, inspirational, all the things. Jack is amazing. Thank you so much for being on, Jack, and taking the time. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching, and we will see you all again next week. Bye, everybody.